Respectfully, Brittney Griner was in a Russian prison. You would think that somebody who is now free, back in America on home soil, would not have too much to complain about.
After Stephen A., Smith completely destroyed Brittney Griner for making racial remarks about Caitlin Clark, the Russian prison survivor. Griner thought she could play the race card about crowd noise, but Stephen A. reminded her of some uncomfortable truth that she apparently forgot. The comeback was so brutal that Griner lost her mind completely. It was more embarrassing for Griner to be called out for her racial remarks or to have Stephen A. remind her about the Russian prison rescue. It is stunning to watch. The breakdown that ensued was so amazing that it merits its own highlight video. Stephen A. Smith chose to offer a reality check that drove Griner into a total tailspin. If you appreciate this content, consider giving this video a like and subscribing to the channel. Believe it or not, more than 85% of viewers haven't subscribed yet. It's free and only takes a second, but it means the world to us. So, did you subscribe already?
Great.
Thank you so much for your support. Now back to the video.
Yeah, she says right there, watch this. Every time we play her, there's this commotion, like this loud rumbling from the stands. Turns out it's people, thousands of them, just sitting there watching on purpose. It's very disruptive. She says WNBA games used to be a chill, quiet place. You could bring your laptop and relax, maybe even get a little work done. But now it's like there's large gatherings of people watching us from the stands. Some of them are yelling crazy shit about what they're seeing, putting unfair pressure on us to score, like we're there for their entertainment. You are! The whole thing is toxic. I saw a guy with his daughter in the crowd, both of them yelling, couldn't hear what they were saying exactly, but it was either my performance or some light racism. But
in a recent interview, Griner complained about the increased crowd noise and fan engagement that Caitlin Clark has brought to the WNBA. She specifically mentioned seeing a father and daughter cheering in the stands and assumed their enthusiasm was either about her performance or some light racism. Griner used this phrase to describe fans being excited about basketball games. For a moment, imagine that a professional athlete looked at people cheering during sporting events and immediately assumed racial motivations. That level of paranoia and victim mentality is exactly what Stephen A. Smith could not tolerate.
Respectfully, Brittney Griner was in a Russian prison. You would think that somebody who is now free, back in America on home soil, would not have too much to complain about. Especially something like this. Fans in every sport. She described the fans.
Yeah.
When Stephen A. learned of Griner's remarks, he did not hold back. He reminded everyone that Griner had recently been freed from a Russian prison through a prisoner exchange that included the release of Victor Bout, an arms dealer known as the Merchant of Death, who had been found guilty of conspiring to kill Americans. The U.S. government had exchanged a convicted terrorist for Griner's return, and her reaction to her newfound freedom was to complain about crowd noise.
When you, clearly she's not remembering who they let out to get her back.
The Merchant of Death.
The Merchant of Death. An arms dealer that wanted to kill American citizens, according to the reports. That's who they let out. For her.
Even Griner's supporters were unable to defend her position due to the extreme ingratitude and tone deafness of the comparison Stephen A. made. Instead of acknowledging the valid point Stephen A. raised or showing any gratitude for her situation, Griner doubled down on the victim narrative and started attacking Stephen personally. She accused him of not understanding her experience, dismissed his analysis as ignorant, and essentially had a public meltdown because someone dared to challenge her worldview.
prices, insane. Let me read you the ticket prices. After Caitlin Clark's been hurt for 2 weeks. All right, so let's go through this. Caitlin Clark absence is having an immediate impact beyond the court. According to data shared by Yahoo Sports via TickPick, prices for 2 specific Indiana Fever away games against the Chicago Sky and the Washington Mystics dropped.
Gurrier complained about crowd noise interfering with her ability to play basketball, but her own remarks and subsequent meltdown caused far more noise and distraction than any crowd could. She became the very thing she was complaining about, a disruptive force that detracts from the actual game. Stephen A's analysis went beyond the prison rescue angle, though that was undoubtedly the most brutal part of his commentary. Highlighted how Gurrier's complaints reveal a fundamental misunderstanding of what professional sports entertainment is supposed to be. Fans do not pay to sit quietly and politely applaud. Instead, they pay to express their emotions, cheer for great plays, and create an atmosphere. The fact that Gurrier found crowd enthusiasm disruptive demonstrates how detached she has become from the reality of professional athletics. In every other sport, players feed off crowd energy and use it to elevate their performance. But Gurrier's meltdown also showed how unprepared some WNBA players were for mainstream attention for 25 years. The racial component of Gurrier's initial remarks was especially problematic because it assumed the worst possible motivations from fans who were just excited about basketball. The assumption that father-daughter pairs cheering at games must be engaging in racism shows a worldview that is actively searching for problems rather than appreciating opportunities. Clark's arrival brought real scrutiny, real pressure, and real consequences for performance, and some players were obviously not ready for that adjustment. Gurrier's casual use of light racism to describe crowd noise was exactly the kind of reckless rhetoric that Stephen A has spent his career challenging. He also pointed out how dangerous it is when public figures casually throw around accusations of racism without any evidence or context, diminishing the impact of addressing actual racial issues and creating division where none needs to exist. For someone who has never been held responsible for their words, Stephen A's comments was exactly what you would anticipate. The timing of Gurrier's meltdown was particularly embarrassing because it occurred at a time when the WNBA is experiencing unprecedented growth in popularity and revenue, largely due to Caitlin Clark's impact. Instead of embracing the opportunity that increased attention provides, Gurrier was complaining about the very thing that is making her and every other WNBA player more money than they have ever made. The prison rescue angle that Stephen A brought up was particularly effective because it highlighted the stark contrast between Gurrier's experience behind bars and her current complaints about American basketball fans should be celebrating every moment of freedom. Gurrier's incapacity to express gratitude for her rescue and return to professional basketball reveals a level of entitlement that is genuinely shocking. The U.S. government literally negotiated with terrorists to secure her freedom, and her responses to complain about the noise level at basketball games show how detached from reality she has become. The meltdown also revealed how thin-skinned Gurrier really is when confronted with valid criticism. Stephen, instead of responding with those concerns, A was confronting her complaints with rational counterarguments and pointing out objective facts about her circumstances rather than disparaging her personally or making unjust allegations. Gurrier reacted defensively and angrily. The comparison to other professional athletes was especially detrimental to Griner's standing. No one else in professional sports complains about crowd noise the way Griner did, which makes her remarks seem even more out of touch. What made the situation worse for Griner was that Stephen A was not alone in his criticism. Other media figures, former players, and even some current WNBA players began to question her remarks and approach. The meltdown that followed demonstrated that she was not prepared to handle widespread criticism of her victim mentality. A pointed out that players in the NBA, NFL, MLB, and NHL deal with hostile road environments and fervent fans as part of their jobs. Griner's attempts to introduce racial dynamics into the conversation were especially problematic because they diverted attention from discussing the WNBA's growth and success. Rather than celebrating increased fan engagement and revenue, she was searching for issues and complaints where none existed. Stephen A's response to Griner's meltdown was excellent because he did not back down or apologize for raising legitimate points. He strengthened his analysis and gave further background on why her concerns were so tone-deaf that the type of constant messaging required instead than hiding behind victim narratives. Griner should face the shortcomings of her position. The majority of players and coaches chose to remain silent rather than defend Gurrier's remarks, indicating that they were aware of how problematic her position actually was. The lack of support for her racial accusation demonstrated that even her peers realized she had gone too far. Gurrier's meltdown also demonstrated the distinction between valid criticism and fabricated complaints. Stephen A's remarks and methodology addressed actual problems. The timing of this entire controversy was especially problematic for Gurrier because it occurred during a time when the WNBA desperately needed positive attention and mainstream acceptance, even though Gurrier was creating problems where none existed. The contrast between substantive analysis and emotional reaction was evident to everyone watching. Her grievances over fan interaction and claims of casual racism were precisely the type of nastiness that may drive away the casual fans the league needs to continue growing. The larger topic of athlete responsibility in the social media era was also covered in Stephen A's study. R did not make these remarks in a private discussion. She was ill-prepared for the repercussions of her remarks, as seen by her meltdown when confronted with the public scrutiny of her public remarks. Stephen A's constant emphasis on the jail rescue setting was very successful since it gave a tangible illustration of how much help Griner's concerns about domestic basketball and the disparity between foreign diplomacy ensuring her release have come from the exact nation she was criticizing. Gurrier's response to fans was striking and indisputable, further shown how social media may prolong and magnify disputes that could have swiftly faded in earlier times rather than allowing her emotional responses and protective postings vanish after Stephen A's critique kept the narrative going and made her seem worse with every remark. The most detrimental part of Gurrier's breakdown was that, rather than demonstrating maturity, responsibility, or perspective, it validated every unfavorable stereotype about entitled athletes who are incapable of handling criticism. She intensified her victim narratives and targeted anybody who disagreed with her strategy. Because he avoided personal assaults in favor of facts and objective analysis, Stephen A's constant message throughout this debate was very successful. He allowed Griner's own statements and responses speak for themselves while giving background information that made her perspective seem even more irrational. The wider ramifications of this dispute go beyond the remarks of a single player. It brought attention to the conflict between certain players' comfort level with modest stakes and the WNBA's ambition for widespread recognition. Surroundings with low pressure, the outburst also demonstrated how unprepared some players are for the type of scrutiny that comes with true popularity and cultural importance. Caitlyn's concerns reflected precisely the kind of thinking that kept the league obsolete for 25 years. Clark has shown that he can deal with pressure and criticism in a professional manner. Gurrier's response, however, demonstrated the contrary strategy. Gurrier's response was defensive, passionate, and ineffective. Even more humiliating was the fact that her tantrums sparked a much larger uproar than if she had just disregarded the remarks or reacted in a professional manner. Stephen A's first critique would have her emotional response cause the story to become a multi-day news cycle when it would have otherwise swiftly vanished. The rescue from jail angle will very likely follow. The most satisfying part of the entire situation was witnessing someone finally hold Gurrier accountable for the rest of her career because of her incapacity to express proper gratitude and perspective. Stephen A made sure that connection was permanently established in the public consciousness, and Gurrier's meltdown only served to reinforce the point about her lack of appreciation. Griner took responsibility for her tone-deaf remarks and did not back down when she attempted to play victim Stephen A made her face the flaws in her real arguments by refusing to allow her to hide behind racial grievances or defensive diversion. Gurrier's breakdown basically demonstrated each point. Stephen A revealed that she is the exact kind of entitled athlete who whines about success rather than seizing opportunities while discussing her mindset and approach to professional sports, rather than exhibiting development, responsibility, or perspective. Gurrier will likely become more well-known for her incapacity to take criticism than for any basketball accomplishments as a result of this incident. Any beneficial contributions she could have made to the sport were overshadowed by her breakdown, which solidified her reputation as someone who causes issues rather than resolves them. Gurrier just discovered why you should never try to play victim with Stephen A. Smith. Her racial remarks backfired spectacularly, and the ensuing meltdown was pure entertainment. The Russian prison rescue angle was extremely brutal, but absolutely necessary. If you agree with Stephen A., hit the like button and subscribe for more moments of accountability.